welcome to the Mariah Jean Fit YouTube channel. I'm Coach Mariah. Make sure you like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos as much as possible so we can reach a broader audience. We appreciate your support and enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to another vlog on YouTube and podcast on Spotify by the Fit Minds podcast. Coach Mariah here. I apologize if today my voice is not at its best. Sounds a little bit husky. I am recovering from a chest cold. And I do apologize, this podcast is roughly a week behind when I was meant to release it, but I did run into some health complications which set me back. But we are up and running again with a vitamin and mineral supplementation podcast. So this one will be focused on talking about micronutrients, the importance of micronutrient uptake, but also the relevance of supplementation of vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids where feasible and where required, if required at all. So this will be addressing the current sports nutritionist professional standpoint on vitamin and mineral supplementation specifically. This is the part 2 component of the supplementation standpoint podcasts, specifically focused on vitamin, mineral, and fatty acid supplements, as opposed to sports nutrition supplements, which was the previous podcast. And because I previously addressed the importance of insurance, registration, education, etc. in the previous podcast, understandably, we're just going to dive right into the nitty-gritty discussion around micronutrients and their impact on sports performance, general health, and well-being. Again, I've taken majority of the content and information I'm about to present directly from my prescribed textbook for my postgraduate in sports performance, nutrition, sports nutrition in the 3rd edition, referencing the authors, Professors Asker Ukendrup and Michael Gleason. So, the importance of micronutrients are often overlooked in everyday life and for sporting athletes. How many of you can say with conviction that you are currently consuming the minimum requirement of 2 to 3 different types of fruit and 3 to 5 different types of vegetables daily? Probably calling a few of you out right now. And not just that, do you believe that you are reaching the minimum requirement of micronutrients daily? And do you understand the importance of doing so? Are you currently avoiding your micronutrient intake? Are you possibly not placing any sort of high priority or importance on getting enough fruit and veggies into your diet, and even so enough lean proteins, lean meats? As it stands currently, less than 10% of the Australian population and the American population are consuming enough fruit and vegetables to meet their daily micronutrient requirements. So what does this mean for our general health, well-being, and performance? And due to these obviously astounding statistics, there's no surprise that general health and well-being in Western countries is seen to be suffering drastically. With chronic illness, conditions, and diseases on the rise, micronutrients stand as a preventative, enhancement, and a treatment for many different ailments, conditions, mental function, and bodily functions. Micronutrients are organic compounds that make up smaller components deeper within our dietary foods, spanning across a wide variety of food types. So you think about micronutrients, they are very concentrated, small amounts of very incredible nutrients that we require as essential nutrients in our diet. So they're not optional, they are essential. And they've been established as essential after decades and decades of study on them. So it's not coincidence, and it's certainly not a pseudoscience. They play a crucial role in growth and repair of body tissues, in metabolism as cofactors for enzymes, in oxygen transport, in immune function, and in defense against free radicals. So interestingly enough, at the moment I'm sick, it's really funny, my immune function is not at its best because I was on a medication that actually suppressed my immune function on purpose to try and counteract an allergic reaction. So generally I don't really get sick, I don't get colds because my nutrition is fantastic. But if you are on immunosuppressant drugs, or you are having to take a drug that temporarily suppresses immune system, you will find that you can very easily get sick. So micronutrients have a huge role to play, though, however, in getting better from sickness as well. So the basis of meeting macronutrient requirements, so we talk about protein, fats and carbs, sees that for many of us who are tracking our foods or following a meal plan daily, are dutifully attempting to hit just protein, carbohydrate and fat targets as our highest priority. So we've all kind of heard of the if it fits your macros, which is how I currently coach with my clients. But is that going to be the only factor we need to consider in our nutrition requirements daily? And the answer is absolutely not. However, these macronutrients are not the only important targets that we should be aiming to achieve, as our micronutrient targets can actually aid in providing sufficient energy, metabolic function, assisting with recovery and repair of muscle tissue, aiding hypertrophy, muscle growth, protecting bones and joints, skin quality, boosting brain function and moods, preventing sickness, treating sickness, and even preventing cancer, as I mentioned. With sickness, a lot of micronutrients actually have anti-cancerous properties. So the antioxidant properties of micronutrients will allow our bodies to be able to defend against cancerous cells. And it's, again, not a pseudoscience. This has definitely been proven in many facets. So while the whole world is currently looking for that magic pill, the substance that you can rub on your skin, the elixir of youth that you can take, an energy boosting tablet or powder or magical supplement to apparently fix all of our problems in one swipe of our credit card, the true answer to health and performance has always been in our hands and in our kitchens, in our daily nutrition choices. So that age-old saying, "you are what you eat," isn't too far from the truth. It can be seen that micronutrient deficiencies of any kind can cause serious issues for an athlete or everyday person. And it's no coincidence that there is an impact on performance, moods, mental health as well. The list goes on. So we can see in deficiencies such as iron, iodine, magnesium, vitamin D, zinc or sodium deficiencies, they all serve rather detrimental symptoms upon reaching a level of deficiency whereby things like energy levels and moods can be affected drastically. Even impacting factors like bone health and increasing risk of bone fracture and even injury, not to mention that in a case of deficiency in particular micronutrients, we are more susceptible to falling ill with multiple different sicknesses. So in the early days of nutrition, when we were pioneering nutrition, this is a process where we established the minimum requirements around things like fruit and vegetable intake and even lean protein sources and dairy sources to prevent things like scurvy, where people were spending long periods of time out on boats at sea and they didn't have access to a wide variety of foods and they were developing different sicknesses. And this is where it all started. This is where nutrition, micronutrient requirements for nutrition really were pioneered. So in that micronutrient requirements are designed to protect us in reaching the minimum requirement for optimal immune function. Micronutrients act as the backbone of our immune system, supporting the protective process when we are met with foreign viruses, bacteria, diseases and bodies. Without adequate micronutrient uptake, it is no coincidence that some of us are repeatedly falling ill. So if you find you're a person, I usually get one cold every winter at least. But if you find you're a person that's constantly getting sick, you're constantly getting colds, you're constantly getting, gastro, or you're finding that you are constantly run down, there may be some sort of deficiency at hand. Unfortunately, we cannot and should not rely upon supplementation in place of a well-balanced diet, because supplementation will never supersede nor surpass the value of whole food nutrition and vitamin, mineral and fatty acid absorption. Okay, so it must really be known and understood that, standard nutrition really starts with your dietary choices versus perhaps what you would believe to be a powder or a supplement or a pill or a tablet that you can take to boost your immune system. There are some limited cases where vitamin supplementation should and will apply, however. And this would be in the case where all options for dietary requirements have been exhausted to have been met. and also where the individual person's requirements may differ. Maybe one particular person may have issues absorbing particular minerals, for example, versus another. In the case of somebody perhaps who may not be able to consume seafood naturally in their diet, an omega-3 supplementation could be recommended. Or in the case of an individual who is on a particularly low-calorie diet for any reason, which is not recommended for prolonged periods of time as is, and may require an iron supplementation due to their naturally lower iron intake alongside or paired with the lower energy value of their total calories. So naturally we tend to consume a lot less of those major vitamins and minerals, obviously because we are consuming less food volume. There's less room for us to reach those targets. It can be commonly noted as a major hormonal imbalance associated with micronutrient deficiencies in females with secondary amenorrhea, missing cycles, or even younger athletes with primary amenorrhea, delayed initial menstruation. So, when you do see athletes who are 16, 17, 18, 19 even, and they've had a delayed menstruation, they have not had their first period, for example, this is not a sign of, the athlete being very fit, or it's not a good thing. Having a delayed menstruation is a sign that there are going to be deficiencies in place here in high stress levels, suppressing the production of things like estrogen, T3 and T4. So in that lower calorie diets, lower fat diets, even diets lower in calcium, vitamin B, iodine, iron and or fatty acids, omega-3 and 6, consumption can in fact impact the production of T3, T4, estrogen and other hormones, impacting sleep, moods, performance, libido, muscle growth / recovery, concentration. Okay, so even for people, students in school, female athletes who are still in school, organ health, inhibiting the natural cycle and impacting bone health, bone growth and sports performance. So we see higher instances of things like bone fractures in young people, because especially women who are deficient in calcium. A similar but slightly differing hormonal impact can be seen in male athletes or men in general with multiple micronutrient deficiencies impacting testosterone production and in turn natural energy levels, performance, libido, bone and joint health, recovery, muscle growth, organ health, brain function, moods, sleep and quality of life. And the list goes on. Not to mention estrogen's crucial role in stabilizing moods and producing serotonin, a crucial hormone required for balanced brain function and experiencing sustained levels of happiness, preventing depression and anxiety. Okay, so serotonin is the sustained happiness hormone, that feeling of satisfaction with life, I guess you could call it. And we require serotonin. We actually require serotonin for daily moods to be stable and for us to feel whole, and not feel a constant state of stress. So, as mentioned, it must be addressed that the first point of call, however, should always involve adjusting the diet to fill the missing micronutrient values and preventing ongoing deficiencies before resorting to supplementation thereof. So you must always look at food first. The rule in nutrition is food first. And it may seem boring because there are many people who are more willing to pull out their credit card from their wallet because they believe in a consumerist society where if they spend money on a pill or they spend money on a supplement, that's going to give them a direct return. Whereas they should be spending more money on their fruit and veggie, their grocery shop weekly, and taking a little bit more responsibility with their own diet consumption of these micronutrient requirements. So, there are also multiple risks involved in vitamin and mineral supplementation. Okay, so not many people think about the risks involved. They, think about dosing vitamins and minerals, but not about what can go wrong. It could be assumed that more is more when it comes to our vitamin and mineral intake when supplementing on top of our current dietary choices. This couldn't be further from the truth, in that sometimes megadosing certain vitamins and even minerals can actually have a negative impact on absorption of other vitamins and minerals, and there can be some negative side effects and symptoms that you will be experiencing due to megadosing these vitamins and minerals that are actually quite nasty. There are negative impacts of supplementing iron in doses well above actual requirements, such as heartburn, constipation, stomach ulcers, vomiting, chest pain, and fainting. The negative impacts of exceeding sodium and even chloride in the diet can be seen with risk of high blood pressure, hypertension, and heart failure, more specifically in those who are not as active, who are inactive or sedentary in their working roles. So it's often assumed that an excess of sodium or chloride or salt, in the diet is bad, and a lot of people avoid salt for this reason. However, if you are a very active person, if you are exercising daily, you'd be surprised that your sodium requirements, your sodium chloride requirements as two electrolytes, will actually be slightly higher than the average person's, and that you will be battling hypertension naturally just through exercising. And then obviously as a result, the salt will have a lesser impact, meaning that you're not going to have those issues with risk of high blood pressure with your sodium intake because of the higher amount of exercise you're doing. You're sweating more, you're using more of the sodium chloride. So, and I'll keep discussing this, but it can be seen that we can have too little of a micronutrient and we can have too much of it. And most of the time people like to put them in one category or the other. Salt is either bad or good. Iron is either bad or good, or there are lots of other different types of micronutrients. Vitamin C, it's either bad or good, and you see a lot of misinformation on social media as well. People going around talking about different microchemicals and things like that that are contained in some foods and ingredients and enzymes, and if you have too much of it, everything bad is going to happen to you. And the case could be made that yes, if you have too much of anything, it's going to be bad for you. You can drown yourself with water. So these points I'm about to make is about understanding that there is a happy medium, somewhere in the middle. And this is where we have our requirements, our micronutrient targets and requirements that we need to meet, and understand that surpassing them is not necessarily a good thing either. So, talking about negative impacts of, these types of vitamins and minerals, even though sodium and chloride are both essential electrolyte micronutrients required to regulate fluid changes in and out of cells, in daily energy production and for exercise, it can be a risk to overconsume or underconsume sodium chloride in the diet contained in many foods and salt added to meals or packaged foods. And see how I've said that also underconsuming, so not consuming enough salt, is a problem as well. The same can be said for a sodium deficiency, hyponatremia, I always have trouble saying that one, whereby muscle weakness, twitching, food cravings, and unexplained hunger, headaches, fatigue, and loss of energy can be experienced. I myself have had a sodium deficiency. In one of my first comp preps, I experienced one because I was, I hadn't done deep nutrition studies just yet. I wasn't even thinking about my salt intake at that time. And I was getting some interesting food cravings, and I found that I was particularly hungry, even though I wasn't really on very low calories. And my coach said to me at the time, "Have you been adding some salt to your meals?" And I said, no, I had not. I thought that maybe there was enough salt in them already. And as a result, I ended up having a McDonald's sachet of salt. We had an emergency at the gym. Actually, I had to go back to the gym. A man actually had a heart attack that day as well. I was at a conference. It's an interesting story. I was at a conference for the gym managers. A man had a heart attack in our gym. It was completely unrelated. Unfortunately, he passed away, and it was very sad. But I had to come back to the gym to obviously help out with doing the report and everything like that, the safety report. And I remember that day feeling very dizzy. And we went to the meeting with the gym owner, and we all sat down. I had this emergency meeting, and I was just like, whew, feeling really out of it. Anyway, my coach had said, get some salt as soon as you can. We were sitting in a McDonald's cafe, and I ran to get a salt sachet, and I put it in my mouth and instantly felt better. So interestingly enough, you can sometimes find, even with things like symptoms of low blood pressure, etc., that it's pretty hard to identify a sodium deficiency, and they're usually quite rare, but you'll find they're more common in athletes, people who are training quite intensively on lower calorie diets as well sometimes, or moderately low dieting, and especially who are not adding salt back into their own main meals if they're making it them at home. So there you go. It's an very interesting story. But I actually had a sodium deficiency. So as I said, it can result in what's called hypotension. So it's the opposite of hypertension, low blood pressure. Sodium deficiencies are more, as I said, commonly seen in athletes exercising regularly for long bouts as well. So because they're depleting their water and sodium stores and they're failing to replenish them adequately. So that's where we have a problem there. So we do have our own turnover system of sodium, that occurs in the body. But if we lose too much and we don't replenish it, that's where we have that problem. And interestingly enough, one of the major ways of preventing electrolyte deficiencies and vitamin and mineral deficiencies in athletes can be seen by consuming a wide variety of foods in their diet to meet their energy requirements to fuel their training. So it's no coincidence as we start to get closer to the maintenance level of calories, or even in a surplus, it can be far easier for an athlete to be able to fuel the energy requirements of what their energy output is, from a numerical perspective. It becomes far easier to hit a micronutrient intake, but it doesn't always mean that it's happening. Sometimes you find with athletes that they kind of just shovel in as much food as they can, or they just try and hit their macros, but they're not often thinking about their fruit and vegetable intake or the variety of foods across their meals. They may be eating the same foods over and over again each meal for convenience. And this is where we can see a lot of shortcomings with athlete nutrition and prescription of athlete nutrition. So, basically, on that note, consuming enough calories in a balanced diet. We talk about balanced, and I'll talk about what that looks like later on the podcast, but higher in carbohydrates for athletes specifically, while meeting the minimum protein and fat requirements, which actually pair up nicely to meet the micronutrient requirements if whole food variety and minimum fiber requirement for the calorie amount are implemented respectively. So there's a reason why, as sports nutritionists, we have a guideline as to where the protein intake needs to be for that particular athlete, depending on what their sport is as well, where their fat intake needs to be at for that athlete, depending on things like their body weight, and also their total caloric intake and their energy expenditure. So this is why we have these ratios. This is why we calculate these ratios, is because we have been taught how to do this, and the basis and the structure of why those numerical values and calculations exist is because they then marry up and meet up nicely most of the time with the micronutrient requirements as well, if there is enough variety in the diet being implemented. So other electrolytes which can be depleted in sweat rates include magnesium and potassium, which are required to be replenished daily for the process of meeting their minimum requirements. Okay, so it's not just going to be things like sodium chloride. There are quite a few different electrolytes, including calcium, phosphorus, phosphate, etc. But potassium deficiencies can cause muscle cramping, twitching, cramping in general, loss of appetite and fatigue, and in excess, so if you have too much potassium, cardiac arrhythmia and cardiac failure. I've had a potassium deficiency as well in prep. I had a muscle twitch in my leg that would not go away for days at a time. Now, this doesn't mean that you've got a potassium deficiency, but I was consuming enough magnesium and sodium chloride, and I also was having enough calcium as well. So sometimes the culprit can be the one that's missing, the missing link, and I did look at putting a little bit more potassium back into my diet, and that fixed it right up. Phosphorus deficiencies can result in osteoporosis, brittle bones, muscle weakness and muscle cramps, and in excess, impaired iron, zinc and copper absorption and impaired calcium metabolism. Crazy. Zinc deficiencies impair growth, impair healing, and increase risk of infections and anorexia. In excess for zinc, impaired absorption of iron and copper, increased HDL to LDL ratio, so we have those bad fats to good fat ratio is off. Anemia, nausea, vomiting, and impaired immunity. So zinc is the immunity mineral. Iodine deficiencies can cause a slowing down of metabolic rate. Yes, indeed, you can see a reduced resting metabolic rate, heart rate, and in turn, reduced ability, oh my goodness, to expend energy and even in turn burn fat. In excess of iodine, so too much iodine, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and delirium. Iodine is becoming a more common deficiency, specifically in women. Selenium is another one that's up and coming as well, meaning that up and coming, it's becoming more common because a lot of women are not consuming enough meats and even salt in their diet, iodized salt, and this is where we're seeing the iodine deficiencies popping up. As examples, and this is also as well, if you're don't blame, don't look at thinking, oh, I must have a slow metabolism, I must have an iodine deficiency if I can't lose body fat. Probably most of the time it's going to be because you're not in a calorie deficit and you're over-consuming your calories, you're not moving enough, you're not expending enough energy. But if your heart rate is slowing down and you're adapting, you've been on lower calories for quite some time, an iodine deficiency is definitely, it could be a reality of a contribution towards that for sure, and also the lower calories in general. As examples of high-dose supplement risks, megadosing vitamin C or zinc can actually impair the absorption of other competing vitamins and minerals, which may have been consumed around the same window of time, as some vitamins and minerals actually compete for absorption. So this is interesting, right? We can't just assume that supplementing a ton of vitamins together is going to mean that we're going to be able to absorb all of them. High-dose vitamin C, amongst many others, can cause stomach irritation and diarrhea, throwing off gut health and in some cases kidney stones. Whereas some vitamins pair together as a complementary marriage in the right amounts can actually aid and complement one another's absorption, such as consuming a vitamin C-rich food alongside an iron-rich food in order to increase the absorption of the iron. Vitamin C also plays this role for other nutrients as well. So vitamin C, I once heard of it referred to as the bus that carries other nutrients, and it's interesting. It's a very good analogy. Basically though, when it comes to vitamin supplementation of larger amounts or even micro doses of multivitamins, selected and specific vitamins and minerals will be competing with one another, as the body is fighting to absorb numerous nutrients at once. And this could possibly have a blunting effect on the absorption of essential vitamins and minerals that you've already consumed. So you could have already had a meal for the day and had a supplemented vitamin in a larger amount, and you have no idea how much you're impacting the absorption of the vitamins and minerals that are already in that meal. Things like having coffee or tea with an iron-rich food. So if you're having a red meat and you're drinking coffee at the same time, you will actually impact the absorption of the iron. It reduces the absorption of the iron having caffeine with your coffee and tea specifically with your iron-rich meal. We also have differing absorption rates of different vitamins and minerals, which can differ from person to person as well, in that we seem to have a much better time of absorbing vitamins than minerals. So if you have a look at the absorption rates of vitamins, they're quite high for most of them. Minerals, it's actually quite sad how little of minerals that we actually absorb, and some minerals far less than others even so. Our absorption rate of many minerals is considerably lower, especially in the cases of iron. And iron is now one of, if not the most common deficiency currently globally, sitting anywhere from a measly 10 to 30% absorbed from what we've consumed, mostly depending on whether it is a plant-based non-HEMA iron or an animal-based HEMA iron. And so plant-based unfortunately has a lower absorption rate than animal-based irons. So when we talk about vegetarians and vegans, not consuming meats and red meats and things like that, and even women saying, well, I'm having lots of spinach. The amount of spinach you would have to eat to achieve and even to be able to absorb the iron from that spinach would be far past what your stomach could actually tolerate for the day. So this is the interesting concept of where we run into a problem with not just iron intake, but also iron absorption. And this is where vitamin and mineral consumption and meeting daily requirements and meeting daily absorption requirements can become rather confusing. This is where I come in. We can additionally identify for particular lifestyle diets, such as vegetarian or vegan, and lower calorie diets for some athletes, and even common dietary habits for many women, because we do find women just default to eating less, and it's funny because there are probably a lot of women out there who are eating far less than they should be. And there are a lot of women out there who are eating perhaps a lot more of the foods that may not be contributing towards their micronutrient intake, but may be putting them over their calorie intake. So, these women with the dietary habits, these lower calorie or even dietary choices, lifestyles, vegetarian, vegan, etc., are at higher risk of particular nutritional deficiencies such as iron, vitamin B, calcium, zinc, iodine, sodium, selenium, omega-3s, magnesium, even some essential amino acids such as leucine and methionine, and the list goes on. Interesting. And for men, I believe vitamin E is a little bit more of a problem, but there are other vitamins and minerals it's usually because of the avoidance of fruits and vegetables, really. So, that's where we can see that deficiencies can play a huge role in the lives of men. But specifically in relation to women, this is where we can see all these deficiencies popping up. Another crucial area and cause for concern would be in the case of vitamin D deficiencies. Those who are currently not reaching the minimum DV requirement, RDA requirement, because technically there isn't an RDA requirement, so I'll call it the daily value, because there's a couple of different values you can go by, with little to no direct sunlight exposure daily. Okay, so people are shying away from the sun, and this can cause vitamin D deficiencies. Vitamin D plays an incredibly important role in working alongside calcium to strengthen bones and joints. And the process, if you ever research it or have a look into it, is very interesting how it all occurs. Plus aiding in repair of muscle tissue, and yes, hypertrophy and growth of muscle tissue. So if you're currently wanting to grow a substantial amount of muscle and you're not spending any time in the sun daily, even, filtered light coming through your window, etc., you've got a serious problem here. And this has been recently studied rigorously. The interesting thing is that now more than ever, vitamin D is being studied in nutrition and sports nutrition in how it aids muscle repair, growth, and recovery. It's incredible. As well as preventing and helping to recover from respiratory tract conditions such as the common cold, the flu, and yes, indeed, COVID. COVID is included. It is not some sort of magical disease. Yes, obviously, huge impacts of COVID, but it can be treated in a similar way to other respiratory conditions with the same vitamin and mineral profiles and things like, garlic, ginger, turmeric, etc., which are all being used for fighting colds and flus as well. So vitamin D, incredible for fighting respiratory conditions and preventing them. So a lot of the time you'll find, and this is one of the major reasons we see people getting sick in winter, people are spending less time outdoors because it is cold, and also because the sunlight is not going to be as strong, okay? Majority of our vitamin D requirements will be met from direct exposure to sunlight, with a very small amount retrieved from our food. And so we cannot physically achieve our vitamin D requirements from food. Basically, we are like plants. We also require sunshine. It's like our own version of photosynthesis, I suppose you could call it, but not quite. With the real risk of skin cancer from overexposure to UV rays, in recent years, the avoidance of direct sunlight has seen the unfortunate perpetuation or at least exacerbation of vitamin D deficiencies. So what does this mean for our micronutrient uptake, right? So which amounts constitute as too little or perhaps too much, and how do we play it safe with our micronutrient uptake and supplementation protocol? How do we get this right? I've received quite a few messages about micronutrients and trying to understand whether or not you've got a deficiency or how to meet your requirements, what that looks like. Now, I could spend this podcast listing off the milligrams that you need to meet for your iron, your magnesium, your selenium, and bore the absolute crap out of you. But I'm going to talk about the ways that you can access this as a service, and in a way that can get a better picture of where you're currently sitting at versus where you need to be, and what types of values you can use to understand what requirements you have for your micronutrient uptake. So currently, there are limited ways of being able to establish whether or not a person is meeting the minimum requirements for their own individual micronutrient dietary needs, which doesn't sound too encouraging. However, as it stands, there are indeed average measurements or targets called an RDA, recommended dietary allowance, which have been established as the intake required to meet the nutritional needs of more than 97.5% of healthy people, okay? In some cases, there are more specific values for specific age groups and genders called EARs, so years. And you can look these up, they are available. They are of a global standard, I believe, and there are going to be individual ones as well for each country. It depends. Sometimes there are going to be different ones for different countries, especially things like for vitamin D. For vitamins, such as vitamin D, biotin, and pantothenic acid, evidence is currently insufficient to establish a specific RDA. So what's called an AI has been set, and these are the general guides we can follow for our target micronutrient requirements. So there's always going to be some value to go by, and they are readily available. They're free, usually very accessible, You can Google them if you really want to, and generally if you're looking up information, you just want to make sure that it's going to be via things like dietary associations and websites that are legitimate. And obviously the government as well. We've got government websites that do list basic requirements as well. So I would list the numerous specific values, as I said, of every vitamin, mineral and fatty acid. However, I would be here forever. It would be boring. You wouldn't remember everything. And also I don't like to give that type of advice because it's like just pulling it from a table. It's not going to be for everybody. And I do think that it's important that we figure out where you stand first before getting worried about every single nitty-gritty tiny little detail. So I'm going to make special mention that discussing these values with your coach as a sports nutritionist or dietitian would be the safest bet for establishing your daily requirements. So this is part of our job. This is part of why dietitians and sports nutritionists exist. We are here to untangle the mess and help you understand your intake. And it's important from individual to individual to assess a person's intake separately before you then make assumptions about anything, and also things like blood tests, etc. It is no coincidence that you will find a wide variety of vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids, including, this is where you're going to find them, and this is what they are, including A, D, E, K, B1, B2, B3, B6, B12, folic acid, biotin, pantothenic acid, vitamin C, calcium, chloride, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, sodium, sulfur, chromium, cobalt, copper, fluorine, iodine, iron, manganese, molybdenum, I think it's molybdenum, selenium, zinc, vitamin D, omega-3 and omega-6. Sorry, some of these I don't work with very commonly. They are all indeed available from our food choices daily. And with some foods overlapping with vitamin and mineral content, okay? So you don't have to be so stressy about whether or not, oh, well, oranges have got vitamin C and bananas have got potassium, and potatoes also have a very high amount of potassium. It's interesting that, a nice balanced diet, and I'm talking about balance as in the good old fashioned breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks, or 2 to 3 snacks daily, and looking at the basis of just normal structured meals, we don't have to complicate it, is going to cover a wide variety of these micronutrients because these foods are going to contain little amounts of each one of them, okay? Spread out across the day. Some will be much higher in particular vitamins and minerals than others, however. So that's what's important to understand, is that yes, some will be more rich in particular ones than others. And another layer to add to the complication of the process is that some vitamins will be water soluble and some will be fat soluble. In the particular vitamins will be absorbed when consumed with a food that contains fats, and then obviously water that we drink. So it's really important that we look at, if we're having foods that are rich in fat soluble vitamins, are we also consuming some sort of fat in that food? If you're having a very low fat meal and you're consuming something, vitamins A, D, E, and K, for example, the fat soluble vitamins are going to be, I suppose, less readily absorbed or less bioavailable if we're not consuming enough fats with that particular meal or food item. So sometimes it's good to do your research with this as well. In that consuming a particular low-fat diet may be not very beneficial for vitamin absorption after all. As boring as it may seem, the general consensus should be given that following a balanced diet and including the following food choices daily will assist in reaching your required intake of micronutrients. So I don't want to hear from another person, what supplemented vitamin should I be taking? Is there anything I can be taking to boost my immune system? No, dickhead, eat some more fruits and vegetables. Sorry. I get very passionate. No, dickhead, eat some more fruits and vegetables and take responsibility for your micronutrient uptake as opposed to trying to find something to fill the gap, which may not even do that very efficiently at all. Stop avoiding fruits and vegetables. Stop eating like a toddler, and even then your toddler probably should still be eating very well to try and avoid sickness as well. So lean, meats and animal proteins. Let's talk about what a balanced diet looks like again, because you've probably heard it before. Lean meats and animal proteins, such as chicken breast, eggs and egg whites, lean beef, fish and seafoods. Probably trying to steer clear of fattier cuts of meats, things like pork with rind, fatty cuts of beef, lamb, for example, bacon. These are sometimes foods because this is where not only are you going to exceed usually your fat requirements, but also you're going to overconsume saturated fat intake through these foods. So this is why we have specific recommendations: chicken breast, eggs, egg whites, lean beef, fish, and seafoods. There will be other lean proteins, but you can get lean pork, for example. A wide variety of different whole grains and cereals, including wholemeal breads, brown rice, rye, oats, barley, buckwheat, millet, amaranth, wild rice, and quinoa. Wheat is one of them, okay? And for some reason, we seem to flog wheat because it is a very cheap staple food item, or wheat-based products and foods, and no wonder why people become intolerant because they're eating so much of it. So, you can have a variety. These are all different grains: wholemeal breads, brown rice, rye, oats, barley, buckwheat, millet, amaranth, wild rice, quinoa. Start playing around with different grains. Lean dairy options such as light cheeses, okay, not camembert. It is delicious, but light cheeses, light milks, skim milk, yogurt, light yogurt as well, so not too much fat in those either. Sometimes you can fit it in, depending on where your fat target is. Light ice creams as well. You can also fit in full cream ice creams. It's not like you shouldn't be having them, it's just that they can very easily put you over your fat intake. And light spreads. Nuts and seeds, such as almonds, sunflower seeds, pepitas, cashews, walnuts, the list goes on, unless you are allergic to nuts. Non-starchy and green leafy vegetables. So I'm going to separate vegetables into two categories because you need to get a variety of both of these types. Non-starchy and green leafies: spinach, broccoli, cucumber, kale, bok choy, rocket, etc. There are a lot more. Starchy vegetables and legumes, which I'll put together: potatoes, peas, sweet potatoes, squash, turnips, lentils, chickpeas, peanuts, even though peanut butter is quite high in fats, but it is a legume. So interestingly enough, people kind of bunch starchy vegetables and non-starchy vegetables together, but it's important that we get a variety of both. That yes, potato is technically a vegetable, but you shouldn't be eating potato for every single meal because you're not going to get enough micronutrient value if you're excluding the green leafies and the non-starchies. Fruits: banana, apples, berries, pears, stone fruit, citrus fruits, grapes, avocado, tomato, the list goes on. These are just some of my favorites, okay? But there is obviously, there are hundreds more different types of whole foods and fruits and vegetables. So vegetables such as lettuce and corn, and I call these out all the time because they're just crap vegetables, will come with a lower micronutrient value and perhaps are not so preferential. So if you're bulking up your salads and your meals with lettuce and corn, and you're getting sick all the time, stop doing this, okay? Lettuce and corn are vegetables. They have fiber, they have water. But if you look up their micronutrient values, they're not very good. So, if you want to get more bang for your buck, swap your lettuce for spinach and maybe swap your corn for peas or carrot. You're going to get a lot more from peas and carrot. And it's no coincidence that lettuce and corn are really cheap to make because they're just full of water, okay? So there's not really that needs to go into it. It doesn't need to be of high micronutrient value. Even the soil required to grow them doesn't need to be very, micronutrient rich. So, and even in the United States, for example, corn is the basis of sugar for most ingredients. Corn syrup, there are literally hundreds of different ways to make different types of sugar from corn. So this is where corn is just used as a source of sugar. But it doesn't mean it's bad for you, it's just that corn and lettuce are not fantastic veggies. So, as I said, it has fiber content, so yes, that helps you go to the toilet, and contains water as well, a little bit of hydration, but the micronutrient value is fairly deficient in those two veggies specifically. My rule of thumb is, try not to eat the same food item twice daily. This is something that can really help a lot of people with food variety. Is like, almost like try to challenge yourself to include lots of different types of food in your day. It's like, try not to eat chicken breast twice. Try not to eat maybe wheat more than, once or twice. If you have to eat it 3 times, that's okay. But if you're having bread for breakfast and a bun for lunch and then you're having a wrap for dinner, it's like, hold on, there are probably other carbohydrate sources that I could incorporate, like potato, or, like sweet potato, or maybe some noodles that are made of edamame, things like that are going to help you get micronutrients from different sources. And as I said, like, try not to have the same lunch and dinner. Try to have, because your body actually wants variety. It actually wants variety across a day, right? So across a 24-hour period at least. And then we also see that the body does want variety across weeks to be able to establish our micronutrient requirements, okay? So, and it's actually recommended, here's the thing, right? 50 different food types, right? So we'll call banana one, we'll call spinach another, we'll call onion another, for example. So 50 different food types across a week would see that you have an ideal variety to cover your micronutrient, most of the time, your micronutrient requirements. So challenge yourself to change up your food and stop repeating your food items across a day at least, So if you can, you find alternatives to try, such as other grains. This may be a great idea to broaden your horizons with your micronutrient intake. And as I said, one food item in particular that seems to be repeated quite often is going to be wheat, because we do see wheat everywhere. It's everywhere. And it is because it's cheap to make. It does contain a ton of micronutrients that we do need anyway, but at the same time, we require micronutrients from other sources as well. So, also meeting the minimum requirement for fruit and vegetable intake in the way of fruit in 2 to 3 different types of fruit. Please don't just have the same piece of fruit 3 times daily. I've seen that happen a lot. People eat 3 mandarins. That's nice, but then you're missing out on the variety of other fruits. So if you've got, I'm pretty fussy with my fruits. If you've got 3 favorite fruits that you love, just stick to those. You don't have to have pears if you don't like them. So 2 to 3 different types of fruit and 3 to 5 different types of vegetables in the way of 200 to 300 grams of fruit and 200 to 300 grams of vegetables. Now, that would see that at a higher amount, you're at about 600 grams. That's not terrible. But 500 grams total fruit and veggies, within the previous recommended variety ranges would be ideal. Looking at consuming 2 to 3 different types of animal protein, including white meat, red meat daily, depending on whether you're male and female, you find that men are probably more likely to have 3 servings, and then women, we're probably more like 2, but you wouldn't want to see females having, especially if you're not vegetarian or vegan, having less than 2, because then you're not going to meet your micronutrient requirements, and especially those essential amino acids we require as well. But including things like white meat, red meat daily. However, red meat, for those who are not iron deficient, 3 times a week is okay, but if you may see an iron deficiency develop, you may not. Eggs and seafood or fish as regularly as possible, because obviously not everybody's going to be eating eggs and seafood and fish, and if you're not having seafood and fish, maybe it might be a smart idea to incorporate that omega-3 supplementation daily. And this would depend on your protein requirements, and including perhaps a whey protein isolate to fill the remainder of your protein requirements. So to fill that gap for protein, whey protein isolate or yogurt, high protein yogurt. But don't look at as whey protein and yogurt as like the backbone of meals. Don't have yogurt for dinner or, whey protein for dinner. That doesn't make any sense. So yes, you can add it to things like your breakfast if you don't like having meat for breakfast, of course, but don't look at whey protein as a crutch to lean on, as something that will get you to your protein intake if you just only felt like having 1 serving of meat for the day. Because it's not ideal long-term, and you will see deficiencies in micronutrients and essential amino acids develop over time. Essential amino acids less so with whey protein, but certainly that we see that the bioavailable amino acids from meats can be preferential alongside being paired with things like vitamin B, etc. So, and as I said, only once you've consumed a white and red meat daily, for example. So you wouldn't be looking at having numerous scoops of whey protein isolate and only 1 serving of meat daily. I've seen some clients do this sometimes, and I have to smack them with a naughty paddle because it's just laziness. So I like to consume both a white and red meat daily to assist with reaching the full requirement of essential amino acids, vitamin B, folic acid, and iron. And because I don't currently eat fish or seafood regularly, I also supplement omega-3s daily, or as regularly as I can. Unless you are a vegetarian or a vegan, in which case you would not be able to consume meat and or animal products and would need to find the alternatives which will adequately aid in reaching your macro and micronutrient requirements. This is whereby supplementation may indeed be required on top of your daily food regimen, okay? So in these cases only. But don't just start, becoming a vegetarian or vegan because you go, oh, I don't like meat some days. It's like, it's okay to decide to become a vegetarian or vegan, but understand that what's going to come with that permanent decision is going to be that you will need to be more fastidious and more studious with your food choices, your food variety specifically as well, and definitely, and not even potentially, definitely supplementation of vitamins and minerals back into your diet. And this is not preferred. This is not the way that we want you to be getting vitamins and minerals because it's not going to be as efficient, bioavailable, or even readily absorbed. So how can you tell if you're reaching your daily requirements? There are a couple of methods that can be utilized currently to establish where your current micronutrient intake might be. Okay, so I talked about how to figure out what your requirements are, how to find them, but how do you know whether you're actually meeting them? How do I know? Am I deficient in any of these? I've got some of these symptoms, I'm tired all the time or whatever. However, it must be noted and understood that, before I say this, no single one of these methods are going to be a completely comprehensive process in understanding where your current micronutrient needs may not be currently met. There is no way of being able to do that just yet. We can't, we're not mind readers and we can't get inside your body and assess every cell on a molecular level. I would first recommend tracking your daily food intake via an app like MyFitnessPal. There are plenty of others. Trying to use accurate entries of fruit and vegetables, NUTTAB, N-U-T-T-A-B. If you search the fruit or vegetable and then you search the letters, capital letters N-U-T-T-A-B, it actually is a database for Australia, which includes fibre and then also in some cases micronutrients, but sometimes not. So that's probably the best way to do it for your fruit and veggies. Fresh and individual food items are going to be difficult because some of the barcodes, they don't necessarily, when you scan them, they don't have the micronutrient content and value that they haven't actually entered that in. So some companies just they can't be bothered with it, which makes it a little bit harder. But most of the time you'll see the micronutrient values will show up. So if you click on the food item and then click more, you can actually see what's in it. If it has dashes and it just looks blank, unfortunately they haven't filled it out and you may have to look it up on a different database online to figure out what might be in that frozen veggie mix, for example. It is rather difficult to do for some of them because some of the entries are just not accurate. But you can look at your nutrition panel in MyFitnessPal down the bottom of your diary once you put all your food in for the day, then click onto nutrients and see where your current intake might be roughly sitting, give or take some of the entries that are not as accurate. Okay, if one micronutrient looks particularly low and concerning, it might be that you'll need to increase a food item, or swap it in, out for something that maybe not be very micronutrient dense, and swap in this food item, which is higher in this micronutrient. Or possibly that one of the entries you're using doesn't correctly list the micronutrient value of that food item and is subsequently not recording it as accurately in your diary. So that's something to really keep an eye out for. Understandably, however, there isn't a detailed list of micronutrients in the nutrients tab in MyFitnessPal, so it only covers like a short list. It's actually our essential nutrients. I listed them off before. It's massive, and that's essential micronutrients. In this case, you can always work with a dietitian or sports nutritionist in auditing your food diary entries, or a 3 to 7 day food recall in order to assess your current dietary intake. So this is where we come in, where we can actually have a look at that for you. The third option, and I would suggest using all three if possible. So sometimes it's nice to have, with data, I really believe that more information is better. So sometimes you can have multiple pieces of information to piece together a bigger picture of your nutritional needs and requirements and where it currently stands, like what you're currently consuming. So the third option, but definitely please use all three if you can, if you really want to get stuck into this, is visiting your GP for a full blood profile and assessment of any micronutrient deficiencies. I recommend getting bloods every couple of months, especially if you're an athlete, even if you're an everyday person as well, to kind of see where you're sitting and where you're standing with lots of different blood markers, including relevant blood markers which can be associated with symptoms experienced with dietary deficiencies. Your GP can assess your blood profile for potential deficiencies, and this information can then be utilized to gather a better picture of your requirements and any issues at hand. Then working back in with a dietitian, so don't work with your GP, because if they chuck you on a bloody supplementation, it may not be the right one for you, and they may also be putting you on something that might be able to be readily put into your diet. So something that is quite easy. I've seen some people put on iodine supplementations and they just literally need to eat meat. You know, they're not vegetarians, they just need to eat a little bit more meat and add table salt to their meals. It's crazy. So, but yeah, working back in with a dietitian to address the deficiencies in your diet, or sports nutritionist. Sports nutritionist, not so much with severe deficiencies and illnesses, etc. We do often refer out to dietitians for some of the more complex ones, but for potential supplementation where required. And that leads me to my final points. When and where is supplementation of vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids required? As mentioned previously, you may need to supplement an omega-3 fatty acid, as per the RDA, if you're currently not consuming seafood or fish regularly in your diet. A daily iron supplementation would be recommended for somebody who has presented with an iron deficiency and is already consuming a red meat daily, plus plant-based non-hema iron sources such as spinach. Otherwise, the first intervention should always be adjusting the diet before implementing supplementation or infusion in some cases, iron infusions. And there are women who are just more susceptible to reduced iron absorption and also iron losses, especially at times of menstruation. So some women may have more heavy periods, chronic conditions and illnesses, etc., that may then lead to depletion of iron stores, which then require iron infusion, even if they are getting enough iron in their diet currently. So, magnesium supplementation can be used in moderate cases if magnesium requirements are not being met in the diet and sweat rates of an athlete may be high enough to see significant magnesium depletion. Not just with athletes, but also with labour workers, people who work out in the sun, miners as well, people who work really long shifts, etc. They may see magnesium stores depleted. However, this should be used sparingly, as in excess, magnesium can also cause digestive upset. We've all had too much magnesium, or if you haven't, don't do it. Suggested supplementation will be in the evening before bed to assist with sleep and recovery, and taken separately to a zinc or iron supplementation, as they will compete with one another for absorption. Vitamin D supplementation can be prescribed for those who are perhaps night shift workers or struggle with lower vitamin D levels naturally, but again, this should only be administered once a deficiency and cause for concern has been established. Okay, don't just diagnose yourself with a deficiency for God's sake. It should be consumed in the morning to avoid impacts on melatonin levels for sleep. Vitamin C supplementation should not be used to replace consumption of fruits and vegetables daily. Please stop being that person who believes that chewing vitamin C, the little chewable tablets, are going to replace an apple or an orange. You are an idiot, okay? Just eat the fruit, for God's sake. Again, as the vitamins and minerals we consume in foods are more bioavailable for us for absorption. However, can be consumed with an iron supplement or iron-rich food to increase absorption at the time of the consumption of iron. So vitamin C, as I said, is beneficial for absorption of iron, and you'll often find if you are on a prescribed iron supplementation, it will have plus vitamin C in it to increase the absorption. So it might be a smart idea to consume a vitamin C rich food such as a green apple, strawberries, or even a citrus fruit, nice and close to the consumption of a red meat, which is going to be high in iron, hema iron, and this will aid the absorption of that iron. Zinc supplementation can be used to compensate for lower zinc levels or deficiencies previously identified, or for example in cases of a sustained lower caloric diet, which may be lower in zinc naturally. So sustained calorie deficits will see that we will become deficient in probably a few nutrients if we're not on top of it, if we're not consuming enough whole foods. But again, the first point of call will be adjusting dietary choices to fill the gap and consume separately to magnesium. So zinc separately to magnesium or iron to avoid clashing absorption. So if you take zinc in the morning, and this is as well, if you're taking too much of these vitamins, you can see a negative impact. So it's like if you're already reaching a zinc in your diet, sometimes it's not necessarily required to be supplementing it. But if you take it in the morning and magnesium at night, if you are having to bump up those levels, if you're not able to achieve it in your diet, you'll find that will have a better absorption, and perhaps maybe if you have an iron deficiency, iron during the day at a different time. Vitamin B supplements can be implemented only in the case of a deficiency, for example, in reference to vegan and vegetarian diets, because we see this typically more with vegetarians and vegans not consuming animal proteins. Again, the first point of call will be overhauling dietary choices to attempt to meet the requirements before resorting to supplementation. We do see a lot of deficiencies coming from vegetarians and vegans because of the lazy vegan or lazy vegetarian who is not going to, for example, be seeking out lots of different types of plant-based sources of protein. They're not having legumes, they're not having, different types of peas, etc. And this is where we can see deficiencies become quite prolific. And even some vegetarians who don't eat vegetables. It's crazy. Iodine supplements are not necessarily required for iodine deficiencies if an individual is able to increase intake of animal proteins quite easily, and iodized table salt, which naturally contains iodine or has had it added, sorry. So, it's cheap. Table salt is so cheap, and if you're deficient in iodine, it might be that you might be deficient in sodium chloride as well, but usually it's because you're not consuming enough meat in your diet, or salt, which will have iodine infused. There's the reason why there's iodine added to table salt. And this kind of supplementation, amongst others, is really just a band-aid for a bullet hole with a larger issue at hand in daily dietary choices. So supplementation is unfortunately now being given out like candy, and this is where people are not being forced to take responsibility for their food intake. They're getting very lazy, and they're thinking that the supplementation is going to be able to fix the deficiency or, give them a high quality food, micronutrient absorption, and it's not the case. It's like the food consumption is going to do that. Vitamin and mineral supplementation is a lesser version. As I said this in the previous podcast, supplementations, aside from whey protein isolate, is going to be a lesser version, okay? With some exceptions to other supplements, things like creatine, etc., which will add to your current creatine stores. So calcium supplementation could be recommended or given to young women, athletes, and any women in particular, consuming lower calorie diets or vegans, for example. However, again, the first point of call will be, as always, attempting to adjust daily dietary choices to meet calcium requirements, increasing, in the cases of a restrictive diet where you're eating a low-fat diet or you're having to reduce calories, it might be that you'll have to implement low-fat dairy sources to help to reach the calcium intake. So it can be done. Folic acid can be recommended for pregnant women, amongst a few other different vitamins and minerals. However, again, you guessed it, adjusting the daily dietary choices is the first priority, and there can be dangers to recommending supplementation to women who are wanting to fall pregnant, women who are pregnant. If they are over-consuming these vitamins and minerals, there can be toxicity that can fall into place there as well. So there is a risk at the state of over-consuming vitamin and mineral supplementations. It should be really be stressed, especially for pregnant women. Melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone, so not a vitamin or mineral, but which triggers our natural circadian rhythm and preparedness for sleep. There are lots of different sleep formulas out there. There are ones that contain things like natural ingredients like lavender, etc. There are going to be, especially in the natural realm, particular ingredients that have some studies to support the improvement of sleep quality and moods and relaxation, etc. So it's not that that's a whole lot of hocus pocus. But at the same time, if you're having trouble with sleep, you probably need to assess what's causing the issue with sleep. It could be a melatonin deficiency. You may not be getting enough vitamin D, so then you're not producing enough melatonin. It could be that you're having too much caffeine close to bedtime, or you're having too much caffeine in general. The half-life of caffeine is actually quite long. It's like 8 to 10 hours, and then it's even more the more caffeine you have. So this is where a lot of people are just ignoring that and having a supplement instead. But melatonin as a supplementation, I actually use with my clients who are on lower calorie intakes for a long period of time, because sometimes their melatonin levels can get stuffed around quite a bit, especially in comp prep, and you find that it can be a temporary solution. It's not going to necessarily fix the sleep, but certainly it can help in increasing or at least returning melatonin levels back to normal. But it does help our natural circadian rhythm. Okay, but in excess as well, it can have no effect really. And some people don't find that it helps at all. So, and it might mean that because they are producing enough melatonin. We also do see melatonin levels are impacted by exposure to artificial light daily. So if you're in front of a computer screen all day, your phone all day, you're not outside, you're under artificial lights inside, which most bloody people are these days, it's going to impact your natural melatonin production quite dramatically, especially if you're on technology or in front of a screen at night watching movies right before bed. That's going to impair and actually reduce your own natural melatonin levels. So no wonder you're having trouble sleeping. So this is why having time away from screens is a good idea. Temporary supplementation, as I said, of this hormone can be used wisely in some instances for clients who might be lower in vitamin D, but then again, you could just tackle the vitamin D problem first. Such as night shift workers, I would say this would be pretty relevant and pretty useful. And it has been used in the past for nurses and the like. Or, as I said, for those who may have had impacts on adrenal function, so people who've been under stress, in comp prep, you can't avoid it. It's going to happen. You need to have a high level of energy expenditure and lower level of calories to keep you in a calorie deficit. And so this is where we can see some issues with production of melatonin as a hormone. So long-term use would not be advised. You don't want to use it as a crutch. And again, sometimes it can be completely obsolete and really stop working altogether. Multivitamins have been previously recommended to top up micronutrient requirements. However, there is little evidence to support that this can be of any great benefit as opposed to simply achieving your nutrient requirements in your diet. So a multivitamin is not harmless. Harmful. It's not going to, taking a multivitamin is not going to harm you. But also just imagine you're spending like, $30, $40 on a multivitamin. Is it going to help you? If it's only microdosing components and little parts of your micronutrient profile, and let's say you've already achieved your vitamin B for the day and you're just microdosing a little bit of that on top, it's like, it's like sprinkling pepper on ice cream. I don't know why you're doing that. It's just pointless. Just because a multivitamin has lots of different vitamins in it doesn't mean that you're going to need all of them, and doesn't mean also that those small amounts that it's containing is even going to contribute greatly at all to your intake or do anything. It's going to be a very small version of it. It may, yes, contribute smaller amounts, but it's not going to be enough to address a bigger problem. So I find personally multivitamins are a little bit of a waste of time. Sometimes they can be recommended to stack on top of an athlete's diet, but if you get the diet right, you don't need to use the multivitamin, and the multivitamin, again, as I said, is going to make a fairly small impact, if any. So it's kind of like you're not using the right solution for the problem. You're just kind of throwing something at it and hoping it works, but you don't actually know. You're guessing whether or not what's contained in that multivitamin is going to be things that you need. You might just be literally eating a ton or consuming or taking a ton of tiny little vitamins in there that you're already getting, and you may not be even getting enough of maybe one or two in there that you probably need a little bit more of. So that's why I'm not a big fan of multivitamins myself. A lot of dietitians and sports nutritionists are not as well. I think it's a lazy man's way of, addressing a bigger problem at hand. So often micronutrient doses in these multivitamins are so minor, and they're all mixed together as well. So then you can find that they can be fairly obsolete, because if you've got zinc, iron and magnesium in a multivitamin together, wow, look at those vitamins competing for absorption with one another. This is where we can see that a multivitamin is, to me, I think it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's a very blanket type of rule or method that people tend to go to and assume is going to be the best bang for your buck, but it's just not. Also, it's not necessarily, as I said, it's not necessarily harmful to take a multivitamin, but in the way of it being beneficial, I wouldn't say that there's any value to it. And from brand to brand as well, what is contained in a multivitamin can be drastically different, depending on what they have allocated in their budget for the ingredients and how much they've spent on creating the product. So we can't actually assume that multivitamin, they might have said, well, we want to keep this multivitamin under $20 and we're going to fill it full of a micronutrient that we can, we can produce quite cheaply, and no one's going to know the difference. So it's kind of like you're literally taking a placebo, vitamin. And you'll often see that companies will cut corners. They will fill multivitamins with pointless, cheaper options to fill out the product. And because it's not in a mega dose, it's not in a larger dose, it's not going to be of any risk, so to speak, but it's also not going to be of any sort of specific benefit to your specific needs either. So again, this is why I don't like multivitamins that much, is because they just don't seem to hit the target. It's like throwing a dart and it's hitting the wall, but we're not hitting anything specifically, and we don't really know why we're even throwing the dart. So this can often stand as a waste of your money if you're consuming smaller amounts of vitamins. You may already be achieving, as I said, successfully in your diet. So, it's just, I'm not a big fan of multivitamins. Some people are. Some dietitians might recommend them occasionally, but I do think that's just a bit of a lazy approach. Supplements. Okay, so to finish off, sorry, I did bang on about multivitamins for a bit there. Supplements that are just not recommended or supported, there are going to be more, okay? I just can't be fucked giving you a list of them. Mega dose vitamin C or minerals. Sorry, vitamins or minerals, not just vitamin C. Mega dose anything, but mega dose vitamins or minerals. So really, really, really high dose for whatever reason someone has told you to do that. Microdosed multivitamins. Getting towards the end of the podcast, I'm mixing my words up. Microdosed multivitamins. So again, these very, like these concoctions of just random tiny doses of things. Actually, it's funny too. You find microdoses of multivitamins. I'll get there. You find microdoses of multivitamins. It's probably because it's a mouthful. In things like energy drinks. So you'll see like vitamin B, vitamin. It's just this little, tiny little amount. Just I don't know why you put that in there. Greens powders, and again, not very bioavailable from a drink. Greens powders, no, put them out the window. Just eat the fucking green vegetables, because people think the greens powders are going to deliver the value of what's in the greens, but that's not true. Once it's been turned into a powder, you have literally stripped it of all the good shit. Collagens of any sort. Collagen is, oh my God, such a booming product that has literally little to no evidence behind it, and even so, just normal whey protein powder is of such higher quality than what a collagen, is. Collagen powder. ZMA complex. So because obviously zinc and magnesium taken together, they compete for absorption. So yep, completely obsolete. This last part of the podcast is hilarious. Energy formulas. Oh, more energy. Like just tons of microdoses of vitamin B and like random other little micronutrients in there. Energy, and the list goes on. I don't have the time nor the patience to list anymore, but if you would like to discuss anything further that you are curious about, any products that you want to send me, just be prepared for me to tell you just one word, just bullshit, but in some cases I might not. You might get a different answer. Anything you're curious about, please feel free to message me or a fellow sports nutritionist or dietitian. It is our jobs. I am so sorry if I've broken your heart today and you have to go and if you have to reassess your vitamin and mineral cabinet, thinking you're so healthy. But if anything, have a look at your vitamin and mineral cabinet. How much are you accessing that? And then look at your fridge, right? Go, hold on, the fridge comes first. What have I got in there? Have I got fruits and veggies, in my freezer, etc.? What have you got access to that can actually replace your vitamin and mineral supplementation? So look at it the other way around. What can I do to change this? What can I do to make changes in my diet so that I'm not having to reach for vitamins and mineral supplementations, and only where required? I understand seafood. Not everyone likes it. Omega-3 supplementation, easy fix. Also on that note, omega-3s are not as bioavailable from our fish and seafood as they used to be due to fish farming, etc., and just overbreeding, etc. So we're finding that omega-3 supplementation may be, especially even for vegans as well, flax, omega-3, you can have a vegan or plant-based omega-3 supplementation, is actually going to be more effective. So in that case, definitely for omega-3s, because as I said, unfortunately with the fish and seafood, the way that it is now currently farmed, we don't see a high content of omega-3s in our fish and seafood anymore. So that is it from me. I hope you have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are listening to this podcast. I'm looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.